Last week, on the first Sunday of Advent, a candle was lighted for hope. On this second Sunday of Advent, we light a candle for love. Mother Teresa reminded us that there is a light in this world, a healing spirit more powerful than any darkness may encounter. We sometimes lose sight of this force when there is suffering and too much pain. Then suddenly, the Spirit will emerge through the lives of ordinary people who hear a call and answer in extraordinary ways. On this second Sunday of Advent, during this holiday season, throughout the year to come, and always in our lives, may we know that we are loved. May we share the love we have, and may we be the love we wish to see. We light this candle for love.
This is Anne Sexton's poem, Welcome Morning. There is joy in all, in the hair I brush each morning, in the cannon towel, newly washed, that I rub my body with each morning, in the chapel of eggs I cook each morning, in the outcry from the kettle that heats my coffee each morning, in the spoon and the chair that cry, "Hello there, Anne," each morning, in the Godhead of the table that I set my silver plate cup upon each morning. All this is God, right here in my pea green house, each morning. And I mean, though often forget, to give thanks, to faint down by the kitchen table in a prayer of rejoicing as the holy birds at the kitchen window peck into their marriage of seeds. So while I think of it, let me paint a thank you on my palm for this, God, this laughter of the morning, lest it go unspoken. The joy that isn't shared, I hear, dies young. We'll sing that great Advent hymn, O come, Emmanuel. It's number 225. We join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So be it. Good morning. Oh, come on. Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome if you are here for the very first time. Welcome if you have been here forever. It is good to be together. I have about 10 points to my welcome and announcements this morning, so I'd better get on with it. First of all, I'm trying very hard this morning to be grumpy, but you know, looking out the window, it really is beautiful. That first snow is beautiful. Yeah. Let's hear it for the snow, right? And various things are going on in this room. The nativity figures, Mary and Joseph and the wise men, they are making their way around the ledge and coming toward this chancel where they will arrive on the 24th of December. Today is the last day that the AIDS quilt panels will be here, so linger a bit and see if you can read some of that writing in that lower panel over there. I know that at least one of you recognized someone that you know memorialized on this panel, and over the lower left panel here has the name of Mark DeWolf. Mark Mosier DeWolf was a Unitarian Universalist minister. He was the first openly gay Unitarian Universalist minister. Mark's father was a minister. Mark's mother was my first secretary when I was minister in Mendon and Uxbridge. Mark was a friend of mine, and I conducted his memorial service. And he was brilliant, brilliant. Today in our gallery at noon, there will be a reception for our current photography exhibit, White on White. And it is quite an exhibit if you haven't seen it, and there is actually this book that is all about this exhibition, and the photographer, Steve Rosenthal, will be with us and will speak briefly as part of that reception. And of course, the very first question I have for him is, what were you thinking when you did not take a picture of First Parish in Bedford as part of that collection? Next week, at 10 o'clock in the morning, there will be a carol sang with the inimitable Brad Connor. And then at 4 o'clock, we will have our afternoon extravaganza, including friends from the Boston Circus Guild doing light dancing. And that will then be followed by a party in Megan's honor in the common room and throughout the church. And there's even going to be a photo booth, so you might want to bring whatever goofy attire you want to wear in that photo booth. Megan is at a conference today, so we can talk as much as we want to about her. And there will, by the way, be a gift given to Megan at the party, and if you would like to contribute financially to that gift, you may write a check and put Megan's name on the memo line, and we will present that to her next Sunday. Today, December 10th, is also International Human Rights Day. And it celebrates the adoption of the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the foundational document of the United Nations as well as the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Human rights are in some tough shape these days, you may have noticed. And so if you wish, there are lots of copies of the UDHR here as well as in the common room on the piano and at the welcome table, and you are welcome to take a copy. And what better stocking stuffer could there be than a copy of the UDHR? Or unless you want to go over to the literature rack over there and get a lot of sermons. There are a lot of sermons that make really nice stocking stuffers too. So keep that in mind. But wait, that's not all, because we have special guests here today. We have Lisa and Zoe Perry Wood, and they were last here perhaps 13 years ago in this room when I had the honor of officiating at their wedding. And Lisa will be beginning with us in January as our acting parish minister, and I want to give Lisa a time to introduce herself. Lisa.
Thank you, John. Good morning. I'm happy to be with all of you this morning. So just a few words of introduction. I actually live very close to here, just on the other side of 95 in Lexington. First Parish Lexington is my home church. And I am here with my wife, Zoe. Just stand and wave, and then people know who you are. And John stole my thunder. I was going to mention that we were married here, right here, it was 13 years ago. So we, as I said, live in Lexington. I've lived there 36 years. And right now at home, all we have is our little Shih Tzu. But I do have 3 grown children. I have 3 grandchildren. And Zoe and I have almost raised an 18-year-old foster daughter / great niece. She's at college. And in terms of my career, I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. I think that ministry is my 6th career, if I'm counting correctly. So I worked in the fields of mental health, in education. I actually started a charter school in the city of Lynn years ago. And then I had a grant writing and fundraising business for a number of years. And finally, I circled back to this childhood vocation, to the ministry. And I always say that I think that if I was growing up and there were women in the pulpit, then that trajectory might have been very different, right? So there were no role models for me growing up. But I really look forward to being here in January with all of you and getting to know you. And please, Zoe and I will be here at coffee hour. Please introduce yourselves and know that I probably won't remember your name when I see you in January, but I will definitely do my best. So thank you. Thanks, John. Give it up.
I am thrilled. And a time for all ages, Lisa Rubin.
There's a lot of Lisas around here. So, there were these 3 kids, and they wanted to know what to give their mother for Christmas. So they asked her, "What would you like for Christmas?" And she said, "Peace and quiet." And they said, "But we can't buy peace and quiet. We can't wrap it and we can't put it in a box. What else would you like?" And she said, "That's all I want is peace and quiet. I work, I cook, I clean, I chauffeur you all around to where you have to go, and I just need some peace and quiet for a while, and Christmas is a great time to get it." So the kids all scratched their heads and walked away and tried to figure out what they were going to do. And then a week or so went by, and they all checked in with each other. "What did you get, Mom? What did you get, Mom?" And the first kid said she got Mom a necklace, and the second one said she got Mom a really pretty bracelet. And the youngest one said, I got Mom peace and quiet. And they said, "Well, how can you get peace and quiet? Because you can't put it in a box and you can't wrap it." And she said, "I got Mom peace and quiet." So on Christmas Eve, after the candlelight service, they all went home. And under the Christmas tree were presents. and everyone opened their presents. And Mom opened this present last, and it was from her youngest child. So she opened it. And in the box was a candle. And the card said, "This is so that you can have peace and quiet." And so the mother lighted the candle, and she and her children and her family sat around in their beautiful living room by their tree, watching their candle in the dim light, having peace and quiet.
Peace and quiet. On the count of 3, everyone say, ah. 1, 2, 3. Ah. Kids and teachers are off to their in-gathering, and as they go, we will sing Dark of Winter, number 55.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Doherty from the Lay Pastoral Care Team, and I'd like to invite anyone to come up and light a candle of joy or concern to share with the congregation. I'll light one last candle for those joys and concerns that remain in our hearts, and I'll stand by the candle stand after the service if you'd like to light one privately.
As I say, I'm trying hard to be grumpy, and I have 3 unholy readings. I regard them kind of like palate cleansers. Let's just clean our palate in Advent. And Lisa, when I'm finished with these 3 readings, I may no longer be the minister here. So be advised. The first comes from a play by Christopher Durang titled The Marriage of Bet and Boo, and it's a very autobiographical play. And the lead character is Matthew Hudlock, and that's based on Christopher Durang. And in the play, he has this speech about Christmas. Holidays, an essay by Matthew Hudlock. Holidays were invented in 1203 by Sir Ethelbert Holiday, a sadistic Englishman. It was Sir Ethelbert's hope that by setting aside specific days on which to celebrate things, the birth of Christ, the death of Christ, Beowulf's defeat over Grendel, that the population at large would fall into a deep depression. Holidays would regulate joy so that anyone who didn't feel joyful on those days would feel bad. Single people would be sad that they were single. Married people would be sad that they were married. Everyone would feel disappointment that their lives had fallen so far short of their expectations. A small percentage of people, sensing the sadism in Sir Ethelbert's plan, did indeed pretend to be joyful at these appointed times. Everyone else felt intimidated by this small group's excessive delight, and so never owned up to being miserable. And so as time went on, the habit of celebrating holidays became more and more ingrained into society. Eventually, humorists like Robert Benchley wrote mildly amusing essays poking fun at the impossibility of enjoying holidays, but no one actually spoke up and attempted to abolish them. Palate cleanser number 1. Number 2 is from the writings of George Bernard Shaw, and I put this in as the thought to ponder at the top of your order of service because I thought you might like to cut it out and post it on your refrigerator. And while we're at it, you don't have to agree with all of its words, but just for the heck of it, let's all read it in unison. Together. Christmas is an indecent subject, a cruel, gluttonous subject, a drunken, disorderly subject, a wasteful, disastrous subject, a wicked, cadging, lying, filthy, blasphemous, and demoralizing subject. On its own merits, it would wither and shrivel in the fiery breath of universal hatred, and anyone who looked back to it would be turned into a pile of greasy sausages. That might be nice in somebody's stocking as well. And then last is one that's titled Christmas Confrontation, but is also known as the Littlest Jingle Bell. Some of you may have heard this before. Once there was a store that sold jingle bells. There were big, loud ones that went jingle, jingle, medium ones that went jingle, jingle, and the littlest one that only went jingle, jingle when you shook it. As Christmas drew near, people bought lots of jingle bells, but whenever they shook the littlest jingle bell and heard it go jingle, jingle, they would say, "No thanks, I'm afraid that's a little too small." On Christmas Eve, all the bells had been sold except the littlest one. It was very sad because it had hoped so much that somebody would buy it and take it home for Christmas. All of a sudden, one last customer walked in. It was Santa Claus himself. "A jingle bell has fallen off my sleigh," he said. "Can you sell me one?" "I'm sorry," said the clerk, "but all of mine are sold, except this littlest one you can hardly hear." "Well," said Santa, "I don't want one that would wake the children up when I land on the housetops. Maybe that one is just right for me." So he picked up the littlest jingle bell, and when he heard it go jingle, jingle, in its cheeriest way, He turned to the clerk and said, "You're right, it is too small." Last year, someone thought so highly of that parable that they actually gave me a little box with the littlest jingle bell. You can hardly hear it. Freely we have received, freely give. For the good work of this congregation, our morning offering will now be gratefully received. And however large a gift you choose to give, you may be assured it is too small.
Unholy reading number 4. The jingle bells are jingling, the streets are white with snow. The happy crowds are mingling, but there's no one that I know. I'm sure that you'll forgive me if I don't enthuse. I guess I got the Christmas blues. I've done my window shopping, there's not a store I've missed. But what's the use of stopping when there's no one on your list? You'll know the way I'm feeling when you love and lose. I guess I got the Christmas blues. When somebody wants you and somebody needs you, Christmas is a joy of joys. But friends, when you're lonely, you'll find that it's only a thing for little girls and little boys. May all your days be merry, your seasons full of cheer. Until it's January, I'll just go and disappear. Old Santa may have brought you some stars for your shoes, but Santa only brought me the blues. When somebody wants you and somebody needs you, Christmas is a joy of joys. But friends, when you're lonely, you'll find that it's only a thing for little girls and little boys. May all your days be merry, your seasons full of cheer. Until it's January, I'll just go and disappear. Old Santa may have brought you some stars for your shoes, but Santa only brought me the blues. Those brightly packaged, tinsel-covered Christmas blues.
I am in a minister's study group that meets at the Wayside Inn in Sudbury for a few days after Thanksgiving and again after Mother's Day. We pick a theme and we read a novel, perhaps some essays or poems, and we talk about them. And we write a brief paper that we share with one another, and we eat, and, oh yes, we take naps. We call ourselves the Stonehouse Group, named for a place we used to meet, but we are known among colleagues as the Nap Group. 2 weeks ago, our theme was joy, to which I said, "Oh, joy." When Sue learned of this theme, she quizzed me. "When was the last time you felt even a twinge of joy?" It's been a while. This fall, there has been Megan's evil plan. Though my grief has metabolized to melancholy and then to wistfulness, and yes, we'd all best jump for joy now that Lisa Perry Wood has signed on. I am very happy about working with Lisa. But joy, for many of us these days, is a stretch. Not to mention our decidedly unjoyful thoughts and emotions when we read or hear the daily outrage perpetrated in Washington, D.C., or Alabama, or Nigeria, or the Middle East, or the California wildfires, or the diminishing polar ice cap. Where are we going, and why are we in this handbasket? I cannot say how I truly feel from this pulpit, because that would be undignified. Some say, joy to the world. And I say, you've got to be kidding. The Bizarro comic in Friday's newspaper shows an unhappy picture of Santa behind a Fox News reporter saying, "Christmas was abruptly canceled today as 3 more elves and 2 reindeer came forward with allegations." And the caption, "When you thought it couldn't get any weirder." You know, Brad and Cynthia Mork had been planning to perform a duet of that old standard, "Baby, It's Cold Outside." But in the current environment, and perhaps in any environment, that song has become cringeworthy. Blue Christmas is much safer. So anyway, at the Wayside Inn, to the theme of joy, we read a much praised novel titled Imagine Me Gone, which is about a most dysfunctional family of 5, of whom 2 would take their own lives by the end of the novel. That is, if due to the sheer toxicity of the subject, one managed not to abandon the novel way before the end. And we read a number of poems, including that with which we began today, Anne Sexton's Welcome Morning. There is joy in all, the hair, the towel, the eggs, the spoon, the chair. The joy that isn't shared, I've heard, dies young. As, by the way, did Anne Sexton, who took her own life at age 45. Oh, joy. And then at the Wayside Inn, on the Tuesday morning after Thanksgiving, this happens every year, our group is banished to the nearby Martha and Mary Chapel because 100 ladies from nearby women's and garden clubs descend on the inn, and they proceed to ornament and tinsel and spread artificial greenery and roping and sprigs and red berries on every doorknob, mantel, and banister until the entire inn is fortified by seasonal joy. In the movie Elf, Will Ferrell, as the elf, says, "First, we'll make snow angels for 2 hours. Then we'll go ice skating. Then we'll eat a whole roll of Toll House cookie dough as fast as we can, and then we'll snuggle." Folks, most of our holidays aren't like that. You know, at our house, the entirety of our holiday decorations usually consists of one New Yorker cartoon on our refrigerator depicting an aging couple in their living room, he in his easy chair and she dancing before him wearing only an ornamented Christmas tree skirt. She is topless with holiday lights strung about her neck and chest and some holiday earrings and some sort of tree crown on her head with a star on the top. And brightly she says, "I told you we didn't need a tree." This year, a few more baubles have been added to our home, mainly because our son and his husband will soon be coming to visit. All right, this is the sort of sermon where Brad and perhaps lots of others will afterward ask, or at least think, "Is John okay? Are you depressed?" And so you'll be glad to know that I'm about to make a turn and come out of this funk somewhat, but not too quickly, because the conclusion of our study group and my conclusion today is that joy is or can be present in all our lives, but that joy is very much woven fine with that which is not joyful, but possibly even despairing or dispiriting. Joy and woe are woven fine. Those are William Blake's words, and we sang them in a hymn a few Sundays ago, but today let's read them together. They're at number 17 in your hymnal. We'll just read the verses of joy and woe are woven fine. Number 17. Together, every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. It is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe. And when this we rightly know, safely through the world we go. So, joy and woe are woven fine. Moreover, joy is rarely self-evident or easily apparent. One must look to find it. And most often, joy is in unaccustomed places, unusual and unexpected. I read to you that unholy essay on holidays from the Christopher Durang play. Holidays were invented in 1203 by Sir Ethelbert Holiday, a sadistic Englishman. Durang's play is largely autobiographical about his parents' difficult marriage and his unhappy childhood. Holidays, he says in an interview, were holidays. His parents divorced when he was a teenager, and as he got older, his view of holidays also changed. In the interview, Durang says, "My mother was a lovely, vibrant person, and she wanted to enjoy Christmas when I'd come home. I just didn't have the stomach for it much of the time. During my freshman year at college, I did decorate the tree with her, but during my sophomore year at college, a bad time for me in retrospect, I was in a debilitating depression that did not lift for 2 years. I just could not bear trimming the tree. This disappointed my mother, and so I said, look, I don't want to do a traditional tree, let's do a Dada tree. And I started to hang kitchen utensils on it, spatulas and slotted spoons and pot holders and socks and a wig she had and Lord knows what else. My mother kind of got into this nutty version of tree decoration almost immediately, without a moment's hesitation, and we rather bonded over making this silly, highly untraditional tree. It was, oddly, a sort of good negotiation between us of how to have fun. On the cover of your order of service, by the way, is a Dada Christmas tree. For some of us, joy is to be found by doing holiday things, decorating, baking, gift-giving, exactly the way we've always done them. But for others, seeing things differently and doing things differently can give access to joy. With the NAP group, besides the depressing novel, we also read an essay by David James Duncan titled Wonder, Yogi, Gladly. He says that the earliest conception he had of the meaning of the word wonder was a feeling that would come over me as a little kid when I pictured the shepherds on the night hills over Bethlehem, even when these shepherds were made of illuminated plastic, standing around in Christmas dioramas on my neighbor's lawn. Their slack-jawed expressions of wonder appealed to me. Wonder, he says, is my second favorite condition to be in after love. In the section of the essay titled Yogi, he recalls his delight at the sayings of Yogi Berra. You remember things like, nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. When his lifelong friend Mickey Mantle had died, Yogi was offended, he said, because the Mick and me always promised to attend each other's funerals. Of Yankee Stadium, Yogi said, it gets late early there. To the players he was coaching, Yogi said, all right, you guys, pair up in threes. He said, the future just isn't what it used to be. Idn't, I-D-N, apostrophe T. And of course, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Duncan also tells a story about his sneaking into a church with a few friends when he was 12 years old, and on the church's big grand piano, playing loudly the Ramsey Lewis version of Hang On Sloopy, until he was accosted by a Seventh-day Adventist man, veiny with rage, who threw him out of the church, roaring, "This is God's house." I have never felt the truth of what that man did, he says. There's something unexpectedly cockamamie, even joyful, in Yogi Berra-isms and in playing Hang On Sloopy in church. I think that's why here in church we laugh whenever we can. And that's why we've got a disco ball and a gargoyle and an Advent Jesus always welcome sign. There is unexpected joy in the unexpected. The final section of that essay, titled Gladly, is an exposition on the old biblical confusion of gladly the cross I bear being misconstrued as gladly the cross-eyed bear. The name of the bear being, of course, Gladly. Gladly the cross-eyed bear. Which reminds me of mishearing the word abiding and changing the gospel to, and there were in the same country shepherds imbibing in the field. keeping watch over their flock by night. Believe me, I know shepherds, and they are imbibing in that field. Believe me. And speaking of imbibing, I purchased a new book titled Christmas Biography. I have one of the largest collection of holiday books, from the sublime to the ridiculous, because each December I try to figure out what this whole rollicking jumble is about. This new book reviews the traditions, the recipes, the gifts, the greenery, the music and dancing, the carnival and riot. It's nice to be reminded that Santa was once half goat and half demon and ate small bad children, and that revelers would regularly wear goat skeletons on their heads and sneak up on neighbors' homes and shoot guns and run away. Through all the centuries and layers and bizarros of December, alcohol is probably the central, timeless, most beloved and vexatious continuity. There is a nice section in this book about the growing popularity of Christmas in non-Christian cultures, such as Japan, where Christmas is interpreted as the equivalent of Valentine's Day for young couples, accompanying ads for champagne and chocolates. Silent Night, Holy Night has come to mean an evening when couples go out for dinner, exchange gifts, and stay overnight at a hotel. Oh, and this book even chronicles matters of Christmas ritual and religion, though these things have become so tangential and convoluted. Pretty soon we're back to shepherds imbibing in the fields and gladly the cross-eyed bear. It's been mostly an afterthought to put Christ in Christmas, a fact borne out last week when my UCC colleague in Burlington lamented on Facebook, of course, at the difficulty of finding religiously themed Christmas cards, even though she acknowledged there are only 5 of us who want them. My conclusion, however, is in no way cynical. We live in a woeful world, and in public and in private, we can be sometimes discouraged, disillusioned, despairing, and dispirited, which is precisely why we must seek, take, conjure, and imagine joy. The Christmas biography concludes with this wisdom. Ultimately, Christmas is not what is or even has been, but what we hope for. The meaning is in repetition, but a very particular form of repetition, a repetition of forgetting and remembering, of remembering and misremembering. When people say they miss the old holiday traditions, few mean that they miss people creeping up on their home and firing guns in the middle of the night, or that they miss wearing goat skeletons on their heads, or that they miss Christmas being the one day in the year that they can afford to eat meat. At the central core of the holiday is not the lives we have, but the lives we would like to have. On Friday, the day I wrote this sermon, there were movie reviews in the Boston Globe. A review of the film The Shape of Water concludes, the filmmaker believes in fairy tales, and in these parlous times, that's a position both unfashionable and necessary. Fairy tales are necessary. A review of the new Churchill movie, Darkest Hour, concludes, it is comfort food for an era that needs reminding what great men looked and sounded like. Now, more than ever, we need to be reminded what great men and women look and sound like. And if we but pay attention, we may be so reminded. And finally, a review of the film The Other Side of Hope concludes, the other side of hope is not despair, but decency. In this season, may we appreciate fairy tales and greatness. May we practice hope and decency. I'll give Mary Oliver the last word about joy. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happened better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Joy, Thou Goddess, is our concluding hymn. And I think what we're doing here is we'll sing the first verse in English, and then you can sing the second verse in German or Pig Latin or whatever you want, and then we'll sing the third and final verse again in English. Joy, Thou Goddess, number 327. the old prayer. I salute you. There is nothing I can give you which you have not, but there is much that while I cannot give, you can take. No heaven can come to us unless our hearts find rest in today. Take heaven. No peace lies in the future which is not hidden in the present moment. Take peace. The gloom of the world is but a shadow. Behind it, yet within our reach, is joy. Take joy. And take a nap. May it be so. And Robert, you're going to do Hang On Sloopy, right?